think about implementing or taking advantage of the programs, which are tools in my mind, for them to accept and implement for themselves at home. So they have a responsibility just as much as we do as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting relationship.
Yeah.
One that we will constantly be developing all the time. There's never enough. It's always going to be constantly developing, right?
Yeah.
Short on local water supplies and long on regulatory requirements. Do a deep dive with us by listening to the Full Circle podcast to learn how Las Virgenes Municipal Water District and the Triumphal Water and Sanitation District are meeting 21st century water supply challenges for a portion of the Los Angeles and Ventura County regions.
Hello, listeners and viewers, and welcome back to the Full Circle podcast. I am Ricky Clark. I am your host, and today I am joined by my boss, the big boss man, and our public affairs and
I'm not a WWE wrestler.
No, just our public affairs and communications manager and PIO, technically, Mike McNutt.
And PIO stands for?
Public Information Official.
Very nice, yes.
Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Ricky. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And so in our episodes this season and last, we've been talking a lot about everything about pure water, right? The Pure Water Project, its relevance to our region, creating a new local supply of water, increasing resiliency, improving reliability, protecting our watershed. We've talked about the regulatory side of things. We've talked about the history. We've talked about the hands-on operational side of things. We haven't much talked about communicating all of this, right? So as water nerds, we can talk about water all day, every day. We talk about it in our dreams, in our sleep, at our dinner parties with our children, every day.
If you have kids, yes.
If you have kids. Neither of us have kids, by the way. But water nerds talk about their water with their kids.
Yes, they do.
We're very enthusiastic, is all I'm trying to say. But when you're talking about water with fellow water nerds, it sounds very different than when you're talking about and communicating water, specifically potable reuse, with people who aren't really involved in water, who aren't super knowledgeable about the industry and everything that goes into it. And so that's what we want to dive into today. We, for the past several years, have had the privilege of working on this Pure Water Project, not necessarily in a technical sense with our engineers, but working alongside them and figuring out how to message potable reuse, making sure that our customers and beyond are comfortable with the process, are knowledgeable about what's going on, are properly informed, making sure that we're battling misinformation and disinformation out there. And we've had some experiences. It's been fun, I think I'd like to say.
Yes, it's been a blast.
It has.
Yeah.
So we kind of want to dive into that today, especially for, again, our fellow water industry workers, and kind of get into what we see, what we hear, some of the challenges we run into, and kind of contextualizing it with climate change and its impacts on our water supply. So before we dive into that, Mike, can you just kind of talk a little bit about your background and what led you into serving as the PIO for Las Virgenes Municipal Water District and the JPA as a whole?
Sure. Thank you for asking. It's great to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun, and this is really important to talk about for anybody who's listening, whether you're in the industry or just in the community. This is just some good information for you to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. I come from the Buckeye State, and for those who don't know, it's Ohio. And ever since I was a little kid, I've been really into water. I don't know why, but really the first time that I ever really understood that I was excited about water, my parents took me for a camping trip. Went to this state park, and one of those guides that they do kind of like a kid thing on the weekend put us into Big Walnut Creek. And I just remember standing in the water and just kind of being fascinated by this thing that like I couldn't understand. It was like I knew it was water, but there was stuff that lived in it and needed it to survive, and it really fascinated me. And then I realized that water was something that everything needed, everything alive. And ever since that time, I've had this like fascination, and I was drawn to it. Had places up on Lake Erie where I went out on boats all the time, went fishing, was really excited about just checking out all these things. It was a lot of fun. And you fast forward into, my adult life. I had to make a choice of where I wanted to go to college and what I wanted to do. So the first thing I did was, of course, I went to the Ohio State University, the best school in the world, and I became a communicator and didn't really know what I wanted to do. Just wanted to get my piece of paper and figure it out from there.
Sure.
I did a bunch of different stuff, but then I finally decided that that wasn't enough, and I went back to school and got an environmental science degree and focused on water. My true
Double
love.
degree up.
Yeah, and so I just married the two of them together, and I did a lot of advocacy work back in Ohio. Ironically, started a couple of nonprofit watershed organizations advocating for Big Walnut Creek. Ironically, the first creek that I ever got kind of introduced to water, and then I was up in Cleveland for a while, right on Lake Erie, and I did an advocacy job for Tinkers Creek watershed, the largest kind of I guess, contributed to the Cuyahoga River, which ironically was the impetus when it caught on fire for the Clean Water Act.
Right.
And
That'll
so,
do it.
yeah, that'll do it. Yes. Kind of like this shouldn't happen, but it did. So, those are the kind of things that kind of got me really into water, and then moved to California about 11 years ago, and I took a job at Palmdale Water District. And a lot of the reason why is California is kind of ground zero for anything and everything water.
Right.
And it's
In our
also
country, for
ground
sure.
zero for our front lines on how do we deal with climate change impacts. So I started at Palmdale Water District, wonderful organization. I was there for about 5 years. I went to Metropolitan Water District for a year, and then I decided that was really for me. And I was blessed to have this opportunity to come to Las Virgenes and have been here for 6.5 years. And it's been a lot of fun. And I've learned a lot. And one of the things that really motivates me is to help other people understand what we as water professionals understand about how critical water is to their daily lives and how special it is.
Yeah.
So that was what motivates me every day to come here. That's kind of like a background of what got me into this.
Yeah, and I like to echo your sentiment. Specifically, the Pure Water Project for me is what kind of stuck out when I saw my job position open. When I saw what this agency and the JPA was doing with potable reuse, which I wasn't familiar with at all, but sounded amazing. I think my only familiarity with it was that one time when Bill Gates drank that purified water that used to be poop water.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing articles and photos of it on the internet. But besides that, although I had worked in water, I wasn't familiar with reuse for, potable reuse. So the Pure Water Project was really kind of the big spark for me that made me want to work here. And when I got the job and I knew I was going to be working on this, I was so excited. And I have to say it has not disappointed at all. And so this is a big draw for our agency and for the JPA. And before we kind of get into the role that we played and the experiences that we've had kind of messaging this project, I want to know what went into convincing you, specifically yourself, of the legitimacy of pure water and potable reuse.
That's a great question, but before I answer that, you know what happened to Bill Gates after he drank that water?
He got richer?
Nothing.
He got richer.
He was fine. And maybe he got richer.
And he got richer.
But nothing happened to him.
Exactly.
He was totally cool.
And he's thriving to this day.
And he's thriving just fine. What got me into this and what convinced me more than anything is just trust and the belief in science.
Exactly.
And for us as water professionals, that's our guiding principle is science. We follow the data. I always say that science creates data and data creates facts. And facts are what motivates and drives everything that we do here. All decisions, everything we do is focused on what is best for our customers, for the environment, and for the functionality of the agency for us to continue to provide water to our customers. And so, when I first kind of learned about this and the intricacies of it, I was just fascinated that we could create a water supply from water that we reused before. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm always thinking about, how we as humans can replicate processes that Mother Nature has provided to us.
Yeah.
And so the hydrologic cycle and the water cycle, one and the same, all we're doing is we're taking that blueprint and expediting that, and we're just making it to make sure that instead of taking, thousands of years to go through that process.
Right.
This is happening in a matter of days. Right.
And we know that natural process works, right? I think that there's this idea amongst, a lot of people where it's like, let nature do its thing. And like, yes, we know that the water cycle works. We also know that it takes some time, like you mentioned. We also know we have 8 billion mouths to feed on this planet, right? And we have millions more uses of water. So it's not like we can support, population growth and expansion and all of these, products that we've become reliant on. We have to use innovation and the technology available to us, and we're able to do that. Not even just with, the advanced purification process, but even our other treatment processes, like, tertiary wastewater treatment at Tapia. Just like you mentioned, that mimics natural processes. We have biological processes, we have chemical processes. We know that they work, and we're able to take the blueprint and kind of evolve it to make sure it continues to meet our needs. And I think that's something we have to stay committed to if we're going to continue to move forward as a human race.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the sewage system itself, that predates before the Roman empires, where they were constructing ways to remove sewage waste from their urban centers and get it out. And then over time it's just evolved into figuring out how to treat that water so you don't damage the environment. And a lot of that also came down from disease outbreaks. The plague is being one, and that can kind of be related back to bad water, and a lot of that's contamination from sewage. So we have, as a human race, developed technology that creates confidence that we are doing what we're supposed to do to not just make sure the environment's okay, but as a general idea, make sure that public health is first and foremost in, a lot of our decision-making processes, right?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of going back to this, really understanding the technology and not just seeing it, because seeing it's great, but also just actually believing in the fact that science is a guiding principle. And so I never had any qualms about, drinking purified recycled water here at our demonstration facility. I think it's an awesome idea. It literally is the future of water, and we're on the cutting edge of it. And it's incredibly safe. It's monitored incessantly. We look at the safety of it. We look at all the different levels to make sure that it is absolutely as pure as possible, and it legitimately is.
Yeah. Yeah, and, we've talked about it in previous episodes, but, considering what went into putting together the panel of scientists that, researched these processes before, they were ever approved, the regulations that went into it. I mean, this has been in the making for decades. And so another thing I always like to highlight is how we're not kind of just pulling raffle tickets of, solutions out of a basket to help figure out, our water supply issues. This is something that's been researched and implemented decades before, we're going to be serving this to our customers. By no means are our customers guinea pigs, right? This isn't anything new. This has been done all over the world and even in space, right? So
Yep.
We have a lot to look back on. We have a lot of research to look at to make sure we know what we're talking about. And like you said, relying on the science, listening to, the experts. We get to work with some of them. We had, Andy Salveson and Adam Zakais on past episodes. And when you talk to them, you can just tell they know so much more than we even, communicate, but they're able to kind of whittle down these concepts and make them, I think, more digestible to the layperson. And being able to work with the experts like that, the PhDs, people with decades of, experience in the science, and having access to that, like you mentioned, it wasn't a hard sell. When I started working here, there was never a time where I wasn't comfortable drinking the water. I give tours all the time. I'm tasting the water all the time, right?
Yeah, and you know this better than I do, but the younger kids, the younger generations are much more open to this.
Yeah.
They're just yeah, that sounds cool, because they just from the get-go, they're just believe in progress and science.
Exactly. Before they even, have the exposure to the PhDs or the super technical information, they're just yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. And that's a great barometer, right?
Yeah.
And then they go home and they tell their parents about it.
Yeah.
And it's a win-win for everybody. That's why this our education program here and what you do specifically is so critical to making sure that like the kids are the conduits to go home to teach the parents, and that dynamic is so important for us as we move forward with this project and others, presumably.
Yeah, because who would have thought parents listen to their kids sometimes, we found.
That's crazy to me.
Right.
How weird.
Right. Okay, so jumping right to it.
Yeah.
Toilet to tap. I think most of us are familiar with the term. It was kind of branded in the late 1990s, right? The whole situation with, Miller Brewing Company and LA San. They were preparing this new facility that utilized advanced purification. And Miller Brewing was using their water as a source for their beer. And they thought that they could kind of positively, spin this idea of potable reuse in its, earlier stages into toilet to tap. There wasn't a great widespread public information or public education campaign. And so, people who had no idea about, the science or what went into it, of course, they're going to hear this idea of taking water from the toilet is what they probably thought, and brewing some beer with it or potentially using it as a drinking water supply. And that did not fly. And so that's where you saw a multi-million-dollar facility that was almost ready to go online by 1999, 2000, completely canned. And that's, considerable funding and expense that was kind of wasted that could have been adverted if there was proper education. And so that was a lot of money wasted. Can you talk about kind of the weight of the term toilet to tap now, fast forward to 2024, and kind of what we do and what has gone into dispelling it?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. This was one of those phrases that was such a good branding opportunity. And it truly at that time just knocked that entire project offline for 30 some years, right? And what it really comes down to is a lack of outreach, a lack of education, and a lack of like understanding of what this was, because the visual that creates is like, I'm literally drinking. I'm just going to take a cup, put it in my toilet, and I'm going to drink it, right? I mean, it's so visual, and it has such an ick factor associated with it, right?
Do you remember the illustration that kind of went viral before going viral was a thing?
Yeah.
In the newspaper of like the guy kind of crawling, and there was a sign that was like, "Oh, toilet to tap," I think it said, and he chose to just keep crawling in this big vast desert because he would have rather faced dehydration and those potential consequences than drink the toilet to tap water that we drink all the time.
Yeah, I mean, this was very, very effective marketing.
Very.
I mean, extremely effective marketing. And it's taken a long time for us to get to this point. And one of the big disadvantages that we have always had is somebody can come up with a phrase like that, but what we have is the facts.
Right.
But sometimes those facts are so difficult to actually communicate to an audience who's not involved in the industry because they're very technical.
Yeah.
And when you have to communicate something very technical, it takes not just a long time to do it, but you can lose the attention span as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a very challenge. It's a huge challenge for us.
Especially these days.
When like people's attention spans are less than a goldfish, something like that. I mean, seriously, it's like ridiculous. So I think that this is we learned a big lesson. But one of the things that I was really proud of the industry, 30 some years ago to now, is the persistence of it. It's like been this slow educational process that has kind of happened. And a lot of it's been done here in California. For anything water, we're kind of the blueprint for the rest of the country. What we do here oftentimes is replicated throughout the rest of the United States, but also in other countries.
Sure.
So like we were kind of like the testing ground on how we can sort of move this forward. And as of today, if I'm not mistaken, there's at least 45 or more different potable reuse projects happening in some form throughout California, and even more in the United States, and even more throughout the globe,
parts of the world,
right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to toilet to tap, for me, when I talk about it, I don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, we lean into it like it's meaningless to me now. It doesn't have that same type of reach and ick factor, and it doesn't have the same kind of punch it used to, right? And a lot of it is because, again, like we talked about, the younger generations are way more accepting of this, right? And a lot of the people who were so resistant to it, maybe they've become educated, maybe they've moved on, maybe
Mm-hmm.
they've, passed. And I think that we're just kind of moving into another moment in time where people are literally seeing, man, like our water issue is such a problem. And so we're going to have to be a little bit more open minded and trust those entities, those agencies that provide this water to us.
Yeah.
And I'll say this one last thing. It's sometimes we see in the social media sphere people who try to like poke holes in this like idea that like this isn't safe.
Right.
And they come up with like either just fabricated or disingenuous specific kinds of pieces of information, or they just cherry pick stuff out there and they throw that out on social media. They claim that they're experts.
Yeah.
They know enough to make themselves credible, but they really don't understand the entire story.
Right.
And when they do that, other people on social media who don't know, and maybe they're very health conscious, maybe they're super concerned about what's going on in their community and what may or may not happen to them.
Sure.
And they sometimes will take this as like this is truth, and
Yeah.
they'll buy into that.
Yeah.
And that is very, very irresponsible, right? And so what I'm getting at is I truly believe that we are at a really cool, critical place right now where we have an opportunity to change a lot of people's minds, to have them look at what their relationship with water really is. Because we've all experienced, anybody in California has experienced a lot of droughts recently, right?
Sure.
And the one thing that we do know is we can't really predict weather patterns anymore. We can have an idea, but they're so erratic. It's either going to it's going to rain and precipitate really, really intensely for a short amount of time. A lot of it's going to run off. A lot of it's going to evaporate because the temperatures are higher. Sometimes the soil is so dry it just runs off. We don't capture it. Sometimes it just is so arid that it soaks a lot of it up,
Right.
and then the vegetation. So there's a whole complex thing here. It's probably a different discussion, but the point what I'm trying to get at is this is part of the solution for us on a much larger scale is potable reuse. Using water again and again and again, just like Mother Nature has done, for the benefit of everybody. Because there's so many, you kind of hinted at this, there's so many different hidden uses of water.
Yeah.
Stuff that people don't even think about, right?
Yeah.
This table, this microphone, our phones, our computers, our cars, our clothing, all of that, and our food.
Yeah.
All of that uses water in some capacity. So if there's not enough to go around, we have to figure out unique ways in order to have enough water to make sure that everybody has what they need and every industry has what they need, because our economy hangs in a balance literally of having enough water to satisfy all of that.
And I think the point becomes a lot more palpable, just like you said, when we consider and we make aware how much we rely on water, not just for drinking, not just for cleaning and, the food and stuff like that, but how water literally goes into the production of everything that we interact with. All of these supplies and all the little gadgets and gadgets that we rely on, we need water to create that. Our clothes, this microphone, like you said, this table. And I think that when that awareness grows, we start realizing, not only can we not wait for these, for Mother Nature to deliver the water for us, but how can we personally be better stewards of this resource? We know that indoor water use doesn't account for that much water use. Straight up. We have been working to make sure that our customers and beyond know that outdoor residential water use makes up the great majority of our water use, right? So that's when you start getting into landscape transformation, right? We have programs through LV that help our customers replace their thirsty lawns with drought tolerant and climate appropriate landscaping. Can we talk about how that's a lot less of kind of a trend and more of I want to say a vibe shift, right? We're really shifting the vibe of what we consider to be aesthetic and kind of run-of-the-mill landscapes at our homes. Can you kind of talk about what goes into shifting the perception of beauty when it comes to our landscapes?
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. so long ago, when our country was first being populated, we adopted a lot of European traditions, and one of them is you have, like, a house and a large green lawn, and that works on the East Coast and in the Midwest. And when you start getting too far out west, our climate doesn't support
Right.
having a green lawn.
Yeah.
And so, but that's just how we think of aesthetics when it comes to curb appeal of your home.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do here, to get to the heart of the matter, is to have people think differently about what they think is aesthetically pleasing,
Right.
and doing something proactively that helps the environment out. And so we have established here at LVMWD our landscape transformation program, and our partners at the Triumphal Water and Sanitation District, together making our Joint Powers Authority, also have programs that they share with their customer base as well.
Landscape classes, rebates. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
really a regional effort.
Right, and same with Callegas,
Yeah.
the wholesaler, and then like all of their retail agencies. We're all doing this out here because we have a very limited water supply.
Right.
For a whole different discussion, but this is something that is disproportionately impacting our service area and in Callegas' service area, so the western part of LA County going into Ventura County.
Right.
And so when you decide to take out your green lawn that's not indigenous to, California
Or the climate. Yeah.
what you do is you want to replace that with climate appropriate landscaping. And what that does is it not only conserves water, which ultimately saves you as a homeowner money because you don't have to use water for your lawn,
Right.
but it also provides critical habitat for our pollinators who are in decline in their population.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're saving water, you're doing something good for the environment, and importantly, you're fitting into the local ecosystem. You're literally creating habitat for our area specific to the Conejo Valley. That's
Yeah.
what you're doing.
You're really firing on all fronts, right?
Yeah.
And because we at the JPA like to lead by example, and I know I've alluded to this a million times, but we have built a demonstration sustainability garden here on site that is completely open and free to the public 24/7. You can come, take a walk, take it all in. Most importantly, you can get inspiration and examples of how you can implement that type of landscaping at home. And what's really important and I think really valuable for our customers is that they can see all of the different kinds of plants and landscapes and the options that they have, right? We want people to make sure that they know that they're not limited to xeriscaping or like succulents or cacti. Not everybody likes that look, and not everybody knows the options they have, right? It varies. You can get ground cover, you can get bushes, you can get a more lush look, you can get big beautiful oak trees. And so again, that kind of ties into this awareness. I think people want to know and people want to do better. We just have to help them. Not everyone's thinking about, how much water they used in a day, including all of the things they came into contact with when we have, all these other things to worry about. We have jobs, we have families, we have, all the craziness in the world. So really just raising that awareness, I think, has been very monumental for our customers. And I don't think we see a lot of pushback from them.
We don't. There's a couple of things that you kind of tipped me off when I was starting to think about this. We're only as successful as the customer allows us to be. And what I mean by that is we have all the information that we can share with the customer. Our job is to get the information in front of them. And that's a challenge, especially in this day and age where there's so much going on out there, white noise or so many other things going on, that our message of landscape transformation, conservation, or, hey, check this potable reuse project we're going out. We're competing with all these other things going on in the world.
Yeah.
And as of this recording right now, one of them would be the Olympics.
Right.
Some of them is going to be a presidential election. It could be like, any other thing.
Yeah.
Like, start of the college football season. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things going on. How do you get people to pay attention to that? That's one issue. And that's a rhetorical question because I don't think anybody truly has an answer. We have the content.
No,
but our
and the
job
answer changes. It evolves over time,
It
and we
does.
have to evolve with it, right?
Right. Our job is to deliver the information in a way that gets people to respond to it and actually accept it and to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the sweet spot. And you're right. It's a moving goalpost all the time. We
Yeah.
don't know exactly what and when and how.
Yeah.
But we have to take advantage of it when we can see a clear path. But the other part to this too is that while we are extending our hand, the customer or the business, they have to extend their other hand to meet us halfway.
Yeah.
So they have agency and responsibility as well to take the information that we're providing to them, think about implementing or taking advantage of the programs, which are tools in my mind,
Yeah.
for them to accept and implement for themselves at home. So they have a responsibility just as much as we do as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting relationship.
Yeah.
One that we will constantly be developing all the time. There's never enough. It's always going to be constantly developing, right?
Yeah.
And so those interactions that we get to have with businesses and customers, even from our customer service department, those one-on-one interactions from our field staff or from those who work up front,
Yeah.
they have that opportunity to actually have that communication with them. So they are really important for what we're trying to do in terms of communicating everything that we have to
Yeah.
offer to our community and to our businesses.
They really set the tone for the district, especially because they're out in the field. They're at customer homes. They're usually fielding, the complaints or the, challenges or concerns first, right? So shout out to our customer service staff, field and office. And I do just want to highlight.
Good job, customer service. You guys are the front and the face and the best.
Yes, I do want to highlight how successful that partnership that you just mentioned can be, right? We're already seeing it. When agency and customer kind of meet in the middle, we're able to make our processes more efficient, right? So a few years ago, when we were kind of in the early stages of messaging the Pure Water Project, we knew that this project was going to be able to supply up to 15% of our drinking water needs locally. But now, because our customers have been so resolute and with their water saving, we're seeing long-term reduction in water use, right? So our customers over a long period of time are using a lot less water, not just during the drought, not just emergency conservation, but we're seeing long-term water use efficiency. So now that 15% is now up to 30%, right? So because of that efficiency, we're able to do our job better. And that really just highlights how important that partnership is and that participation on both sides of the coin to make sure that we're safeguarding and properly using this limited resource. I always think about that. I'm always so impressed. Our customers really answered the call and, stuck to it.
I completely agree. Our customers deserve a lot of recognition for
Yeah.
all the efforts that they put into this, some of the sacrifices that they've made to contribute to the good of the whole.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one thing that we haven't addressed too. While I think maybe that we are 100% reliant on imported water, and if you didn't know, you know now. And so what this project is going to do is reduce that dependency by 30%. But the other part to this too is that piece of the diversification water portfolio pie is how important people's conservation is, your conservation efforts at your home, how important that is to the pie. Because water is one of the things that connects us all. I would like to refer to it sometimes as the great unifier, because we're all connected to it. We all need it. And when a customer does not use water, that allows somebody else from a different spot in the world, or at least in California, to be able to maybe have more water that they may not have access to.
Right.
So we're all connected. So what you do at home is so important to conserving water, which is why we offer those landscape transformation programs or irrigation retrofit programs. And so this is just a great opportunity for you if you live here in Las Virgenes or in the Triunfo service area or in Calleguas. We all have programs to help you as our customer, right?
Yeah, and just to contextualize that equity piece that you're speaking on, you mentioned that we import 100% of our water supply. We've talked about it ad nauseum at this point. We get it from the State Water Project. We're not the only ones that get it from the State Water Project, right? About 25 million Southern Californians alone are dependent on that same source, as well as 750,000 acres of farmland, right? That's a lot of water. That farmland to grow food and whatever else is being grown there, that's a lot of water. So if we can reduce our reliance on that, like you mentioned, that frees up that water to everyone else that might need it, that also might not be able to, take on a project like this. So that overall equity, it's always kind of at I guess, like the crux of our messaging, right? This is not just about us. This is not just about our little region here. And I think the same can be said about the fight against climate change in general, right? And climate change impacts. How is what we're doing here relevant to overall efforts against climate change here in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world? You talked about how California is kind of the leader. Can you kind of like dive into that a little more?
We don't have a choice. We have a bowl of water. Think about everybody. Just think about this. You got a bowl of water, and whatever's in that bowl is all the available water that we have in a moment in time, right?
Yeah.
And you have all these straws in there from different industries, manufacturing, agriculture, the environmental, customers, businesses, also whatever else in there. Every one of those wants to maximize how much water they can get out of that straw to enhance their personal benefits, right? But what happens if you don't have enough water going back into that bowl? Now everybody is getting less water, which means that they are all suffering collectively. And if you don't have enough water going back into the bowl, eventually it's going to go dry. That's a classic example of the tragedy of the commons.
Right.
So we have a huge responsibility as the water industry throughout the state to ensure that we manage that water supply the best we can and bring in other ways to create a water supply, which kind of brings us back full circle to this conversation about why we're doing this project. Not only are we getting out of the stream in terms of discharge, Malibu Creek to discharge in there because of EPA mandates, but also creating a viable, reliable water supply for the future.
Yeah.
In order to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as best that we can and not relying on something that is an unknown as we move into the future. So the rest of the world is looking to see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they will take note of what we're doing, and most likely they will replicate what we're doing. And so that's why we have, international delegations that have come up in here and say, hey, Las Virgenes, what are you up to? And we show them, and they're just blown away by this.
Yeah.
And they will take that information and go back, and they will start figuring out how they can do it in their countries or in their communities.
Yeah. And that goes both ways, right? We trade secrets, all the time with other, like you mentioned, other countries about what we're doing, and we're able to take note with what they're doing and the challenges that they've had. And by that sharing, we're able to move forward collectively better. I kind of think about it as sort of the butterfly effect, right? What happens here affects something or someone else somewhere else, right? So it behooves all of us to kind of approach this from a collective mindset, right?
Yeah.
So what is the significance of like partnerships in our messaging? Who are kind of the major players?
Yeah, I mean, like here in Southern California, it's going to start with Metropolitan Water District since we are a member agency of them, along with 25 others, making 26 member agencies. They're the ones who are our biggest water provider. And without them, and when they were created all those decades and decades and decades ago, one could argue that Metropolitan was in itself the reason why Los Angeles is what it is today. Again, coming back to the importance of water and the need of water for literally everything.
I was just talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having a common message is so important, not just in our industry, but just for anything. You want to have a common message so people can understand it and not have to start questioning and, what do you mean by that? Well, somebody else said something else and it made sense, but this doesn't make sense. But I guess you're saying the same thing or not saying the same thing. I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's so critical to have partnerships. There's strength in numbers. It's always going to be that way. Here in the western part of LA County going into Ventura, as we mentioned, we have a little bit different of a supply issue than others do because we typically don't have access to Colorado River water, right? And as everyone knows, like the Colorado River itself is the main water source for multiple states, and it still goes into Mexico. And by the time it gets down to Mexico, it's just but like a trickle because we're all taking so much water from it, right? And so having that message about doing what you can do at home, understanding how important water is, the relevance it is to your life and to your family's life, and actually doing things to minimize its usage. At this point in time, everything on the inside of your home is probably low flow this, low flow that,
Yeah, it's pretty
high
tightened up.
efficiency, right? It's already tightened up.
Mm-hmm.
The technology has done that for us.
Yeah.
The difference is that the resident or the business, the majority of the water is used for outside. So it's your job to kind of think differently, to change your behavior, to change your relationship with water by implementing, a landscape transformation, or, change out your old, outdated irrigation system for something that's much more efficient. Have a weather-based irrigation control to take the thinking out for you and allow that to do it for you.
Right.
You know, or you can have a hybrid of both. Nobody's saying you can't have a little grass, but let's not have these giant lawns anymore. You don't
Right.
need to have them.
Let's save some money.
Right?
while we're at
Save
it.
some money, right? And the partnership of having that common message across all of California, especially Southern California, is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Which is why we do work so well with our partnering agencies or our neighboring agencies.
Hence the one water tagline, right?
It's the one water timeline.
We are
tagline.
all one water.
We are all one water.
Yeah. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've had super insanely intelligent, engineers and scientists and PhDs on the podcast to kind of, talk about in detail the safety of this water. And, it's easy for me to believe them, right? I've talked to Adam and I've talked to Andy, and I'm like, heck yeah, these guys are so freaking smart. I'm going to believe whatever they tell me.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes that's not how everyone, receives their information. So can you kind of talk about some other folks that we've partnered with to help communicate the quality and the safety of potable reuse?
Yeah, I think that it's inherently human to be skeptical when they don't understand something, right? They want to ask questions, and maybe just as importantly is who is delivering information to them, right? I think that people also are inherently look for heuristics, and what I mean is they
What
want
are heuristics?
they want to go
It's
get
a big word, Mike.
I know it is. Thank you. I'm a big boy. Heuristics is basically a preconceived notion or a preconceived idea or value or moral or something you're angry about. And you go and you find information out there to back up your preconceived, value, notion, idea, or whatever. And that way you can feel like that you're on the right track for yourself. Right. So it's just a way for you. It's a shortcut to get to an answer that you're looking for. And so I think a lot of people have skepticism, and they also do heuristic thinking, which we all do in a way. Sometimes for me, I kind of catch myself a little bit, and I try to be as open-minded, but a lot of people aren't, and that's fine, and that's okay. Our job as communicators is to get them to understand and to feel comfortable with it. So again, it comes down to, it's not just the content. Our content is here, but it's the delivery of that content. We talked about how it cuts through to get it to them.
Yeah.
But it's also the person that is delivering that information. So, as an example, some people may say that a celebrity is talking to them and they're like, oh yeah, cool, that person's saying that, I'm good with that.
Right.
But that's going to be the minority. Most people,
Thankfully,
from my investigating, are going to be much more comfortable with a doctor, a nurse, a veterinarian, an engineer, or somebody in that realm who is a really high level professional that you go to and instills confidence in you. One of the common things that we all have is we all go to the doctor at some point in time. When the doctor tells you something, you're more than likely going to be like, okay, I'm going to believe it. Take this medication. Okay, I'll take this medication. Hey, stay off your leg, or take it easy on your knee because you're injured it, or let's take an x-ray to see if this, whatever. Or hey, you need this procedure because it may help you in this regard. It may help save your life, or it may make you feel better. So there's a common trust that we have. So when we're talking about establishing other partnerships to get people to feel more comfortable, if they aren't feeling comfortable with drinking potable reuse or purified recycled water, sometimes having partnerships that are outside of the sort of water industry, right? So what we've been doing is looking at establishing partnerships with our county medical associations, and we've so far had very good feedback. We're looking for them to endorse what we're doing, And the idea really is to make people feel more comfortable with what we're doing. And one of the things I would say, if there's anybody out there listening and has a concern about us and trust, is think about it logically. We are one of the most regulated industries, if not the most regulated industry here in the state of California. There is no way that we will willfully or knowingly put you at harm or at risk for anything. Everything we do for you is to make sure that you have a healthy family and that you can feel comfortable knowing that when you turn your tap on, that water comes out, that you have no concerns about it. That's our job for you. And that's what the point is with bringing in other outside partnerships and other outside people, is to make people feel more comfortable with what we're doing. So when they turn that water on, they're not thinking where it comes from. They just know that it's clean, and it's pure, and it's healthy, and it's good to go.
Yeah. We are really committed to reaching people where they're at, right? So we understand, like I mentioned, that not everyone is going to be on board because, a PhD is talking to them about the size, how many microns a membrane sheet is, and, viruses and stuff
and
like that.
What a log is.
Exactly. Log removal, those things, that doesn't translate to everyone, and that's fine. So we have to find, alternate ways to reach them. And those kinds of partnerships with the medical associations, with our, communities, our mayors, our cities, our schools, right? All of those are just as important as the next. There's really no hierarchy there. It takes all of us to kind of be on one accord. And that's something that we've really been focusing on, especially the past few years and where we're at this phase of the Pure Water Project. We've been able to have some fun with it too, right?
Yeah.
Let's kind of talk about what we've been doing to kind of engage the lay person or the lay people, I don't know if that's a term, in our community with regards to not just potable reuse, but specifically the Pure Water Project and the partnerships we've made with local businesses. I think we've talked about this on the podcast, but we've hosted a series of events that have continued into this year. Our Pure Water Tasting Series that we most of the time host, here at the LV headquarters in partnership with Triunfo through the JPA, where we have tours and we have like a flagship product that was created using our pure water, and we make it and we give it away. And we've been able to partner with several different businesses throughout our community: Calabasas Coffee, Tifa, Chocolate and Gelato, Ladyface, Brewing and Tavern Tomoko. And we've had snow cones, we've had pizza. Shout out to Tudo's Pizza. That was our most recent event. They made their pizza dough using our pure water and had like their wood fire grill or oven, pizza oven on site, and we gave away a bunch of pizza. I mean, these have been really fun community events, and I'm usually running around or giving tours during the events. But Mike, you're usually there like actually schmoozing. Can you kind of talk about the temperature and kind of the mood when you're talking to customers that come to these events?
I wasn't doing so much smoozing as I was eating pizza.
I mean, same thing, right? In this
guess.
case.
And so, what it is, yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's such a great way for people to feel comfortable knowing that, like, whatever they use, just daily stuff, that their products that they buy or their favorite pizza or, the water, the ice cubes that they'll be having, from their just refrigerator, right. Or, the laundry that they use and the water that goes into the system, or the dishes that go into the dishwasher, like all these just regular things that people just take for granted because they don't think about it.
Exactly.
The whole idea is to bring them in here or go to them with an event like this and say, there's no difference between what this water is compared to what it was or where it comes from. It just happens to be a different source. But it's all just as clean, just as safe, just as pure as anything else.
Yeah.
And so the idea was really just to kind of help break down these like walls that people put up and get them to see that it's all good.
Yeah.
And the people that come in, they're just like really excited about it. They're intrigued. They come up, they eat the food, they drink the coffee, or they have a beer, and then they take a little bit of a tour. And by the end of all that you give, and by the end of that, they're like, okay, cool. This is really cool.
Sounds good to me.
Now, one of the things that we did in our demo facility, for anybody who hasn't come yet, you should, is we have a kitchen set up. Why did we do that? It's because we wanted everybody to see that everybody has a kitchen sink. They got a refrigerator. They may have a dishwasher. They have a window that potentially looks out to the back or the patio or whatever. And it doesn't matter. It's a kitchen, and the water that comes out of your sink is just here. Is going to be the same it is at your house. It's all safe and it's all good.
Yeah.
So it's just like trying to make people feel comfortable with just daily activities and stuff that people enjoy. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah, and those optics are important with connecting the dots, right? So that these ideals and these concepts aren't so siloed.
That's
it's
right.
all interwoven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intertwined together.
Yeah. So look out. We'll be continuing to do our pure water tasting series. I think pure beer is up next. We'll be bringing that back. But this is something that we're kind of in the long haul with, especially until our full-scale facility goes online. We want to make learning about these things fun and engaging. It doesn't have to be super technical. It doesn't have to be super political. We're pretty good, I would say, at engaging the public and making it interesting, most importantly. That's what's really important because, like you said, we got to cut through a lot of white noise.
Yeah. I like to think that we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take what we do seriously.
Exactly. I don't take myself seriously at all.
But
no, potable
I don't take
reuse,
you seriously.
I would die over potable reuse. That's how seriously I take it.
Right. I'm falling on that sword any day.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So before we wrap up, we've had a really great discussion. I kind of just want to look ahead. What are the challenges that still lie ahead for us when it comes to kind of evolving public perception and kind of, getting everyone on board with what we're doing and, what other places in the world are doing with potable reuse?
I mean, the thing, we already talked about this, it comes back and it's just going to continue to come back until we get really good at it. And it's not just us, it's just the industry. It's cutting through to get people to pay attention. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it's about. And there's so many other things that are going on in the world. Sporting events, kids in school, work, sports stuff, like, politics or, wars or, you name it. Yeah, natural disasters. I mean, there's so many other things to pay attention to. It's really about how do we effectively get our information in front of a large group of people to get them to understand. And a lot of times, it unfortunately requires a disaster or something to get them to, come back.
To lock in,
and then they hear our message at that point in time. So when that happens, we have to be ready to provide that information to them. The other thing I'll say is our customer service department, and our shout out to you guys, is so critical because they have that unique one-on-one connection with a customer, whether it's in the field or when they call in. And those are our most important assets.
Yeah.
More important than our communications team, more important than, a lot of other facets of our agency or the industry, because they have that unique opportunity to convince and to share knowledge with a specific customer in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So the combination of being creative and being fun, because the other part to it is what is a common thread between people? I think a lot of it's comedy. I think that that's a great way to break down barriers to get people to pay attention. We all love to laugh. Sometimes it's seriousness. It depends on the scenario. Sometimes it happens to be a disaster. Sometimes it happens to be something that we all have to rally around.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may not even have to do with water, but there may be an angle for us to share information that makes sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with just a consistent, creative, one message between all of our neighboring agencies and the industry as a whole, constant messaging campaign to our customers and to our businesses throughout our region and beyond.
Yeah, 100%. And I kind of want to piggyback off of something you said. Another challenge of ours, for sure, is disinformation and misinformation. And you touched on this earlier with, some people, putting out bad pieces of information, things that just aren't true, you know what I mean, because they want to sound like experts. I think sometimes people like to rage bait, especially on social media. We have chaos agents that just want everybody to be on the same craze that they're on. And so I think that's going to be one of our biggest challenges as communicators, is cutting through the noise and figuring out how to address just false information and making sure that we're always ready with our content, making ourselves available, making sure that we're being transparent, and positioning ourselves as trusted people within our communities.
I couldn't agree more. And I will say this too. A lot of this, I feel like that we've moved into the me culture where like everything is about me. And a lot of that comes down to, because we're, so focused like this,
Right.
And so everything, our lives a lot of times just live through our screens. And so for a lot of people, social media is like, the most important component to their socialization, or one of them at least. And so like when you have people who start posting stuff that may not be completely true, a little bit inspirational, a lot of that it comes down to they want to feel important. They want to feel like that they are somebody where other people are going to rally around
Right,
and
like they're
coalesce
onto
around.
something.
They're
Yeah.
onto something. Hey, I got you. I'm an investigator. I'm an own journalist.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is that kind of rears its head sometimes.
Yeah.
And we have to be ready for that, right? And I do feel that the longer that we are adamant and we continue to put out factual information, we're going to see maybe less and less and less of that.
Hopefully.
But it comes down to like being a coalition together with all of our partnering agencies. But it's a real life thing. It's a real issue.
And persisting. And we have to persist. We can never, grow too tired of people putting out crazy claims about us adding, PFAS to the water when we know for a fact we're taking it out.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
We message that all the time. So persisting with information, not, stooping, to those levels, and kind of maintaining our messaging, sticking to our guns.
It's the logic of it. Just, I hope sometimes when people maybe get like concerned, take a deep breath, pause for a second, and just ask yourself, why would a water agency purposely and willfully try to hurt me and my family by providing me with contaminated water?
Right.
The answer is we would never do that.
Right.
Period.
Right. And remember, our jobs are our livelihoods too. We want to do a good job, and we genuinely do this work because we like it and we care. And to care about our work is to care about public health and wellness. That's just what it is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. This was a fun conversation. It's always fun to have another like comms person to kind of like wax poetic with,
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, I would agree with that.
I was going to say another extrovert, but I don't really consider myself an extrovert, and I don't know if you do either.
You're
but
a paid extrovert.
A paid extrovert. Oh, I like that. I like that way better than an extroverted introvert. I just know that, like, our livelihood is based on our ability to yap. So it was fun yapping with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun talking with you, too. You're a tremendous host, and I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And thank you all to our viewers and our listeners for joining us for this episode. And we will see you next time on the Full Circle Podcast.